Hey guys, welcome to Spoiler Alert with me, Cinephile Sanket. In this episode, I have invited a very special guest. His name is Navdeep Singh, and he has directed some great films. Films like Manorama Six Feet Under, NH10, Laal Kaptan, etc. And in this episode, director Navdeep Singh, and I will be discussing this film called Bandini, which is produced and directed by Bimal Roy. So, first watch Bandini. Bandini is currently streaming on Z5, and watch this conversation later for a spoiler-filled discussion. Hello, sir. Welcome to Spoiler Alert with me, Cinephile Sanket. So, sir, for this episode, we are discussing your one of your favorite films, Bandini, which is directed and produced by Bimal Roy. So, sir, actually, I wanted to first, for the audience, I wanted to introduce the film. So, this is about a woman played by Nutan, and she actually falls in love with a person in her hometown, and when that person actually betrays her to marry someone else, she actually finds her way to Kolkata and to find her husband. I wanted to ask you, what was your experience watching this film?
So, Sanket, I think I saw the film quite late in my life. Yeah, matlab, I must have been in my 30s or something. At the time I was growing up, I mean, of course, VHS, vagera, you used to find films available on VHS and all. It wasn't necessarily very easy to find older films. Today, it's much easier with the online stuff. So I saw it fairly late. I think I was exposed to the music even earlier before that. I mean, obviously, one knows all those songs. Uh, yeah. So, I mean, I'd seen a few of Bimal Roy's films. I think I'd seen Do Biga Zameen, I'd seen Madhumati, things like that. Somehow Bandhani I'd always skipped, I'd somehow managed not to see that. So, yeah, it's absolutely my favorite, I think, Bimal Roy film. I was quite blown away. It's a very emotionally affecting film. I mean, every time I watch it, I still find myself a little emotionally, overwrought. Just by this, it's so skillfully constructed. The emotional core of that film. It's a very simple story at one level, but the amount of emotional layering that Bimal Roy has managed to pack into it, and the number of layers of story elements and relationships, and of course, Nutan, yeah. I mean, I can't imagine that film without Nutan. I mean, nobody else would have been able to pull off that film, and she carries that film so well. Just amazing film in that sense, yeah. And of course, the music, yeah. I mean, that's the third aspect of that film: the music and the lyrics. How much they contribute to that film in terms of again the emotional impact and the narrative impact, the poetry in that, in the lyrics, and just the emotional punch in those lyrics. It's a mind-blowing film at
ओ
many
जाने
levels.
वाले हो सके तो रुक के आना.
Really, I mean, and just the sheer raw emotions that those songs capture. uh, yeah, just incredible. I was very blown away by the film. I also thought it was at some levels very progressive for its time. A lot of people might find some of its gender politics today maybe a little problematic, in terms of the role women are supposed to play. But keeping all that aside, yeah, because let's not get into the politics of cinema. But yeah, it's absolutely. Immediately, it was one of my favorite films. Yeah.
Oh wow! Actually, I actually watched this film recently in February or March, I think, and I was blown away because obviously we all know that there are many male-centric films made in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, but hardly we know that there is a female-centric, female-oriented film which was made in the 60s, and this was it. And obviously I'm not that a bigger fan of like all those songs in Bollywood, but I'm actually being one. So but actually जब मैंने ये फिल्म देखी, when I watched this film, I was blown away because the as you said, the song was perfectly a part of the narrative. And even whenever the songs whenever they were coming, I was like, wow, just it was the exact moment, and like the film needed a song. And I was very much like blown away by it. And even the last song also meant something to the film, because like I think it was Omaji song. I think, yeah, that was the song. And that actually summed up the entire film, that which way should she go, should she go to Dharmendra's side, or should she go to her original love. And that was just the beauty of this, just a great beauty of this film. And I was just blown away by it. But so I wanted to ask you, have you watched other Bimal Roy films? And obviously you said it. And was it like, how was it compared to other
Right.
of his films?
Right. I mean, I think probably my first Bimal Roy film was probably Do Because of Me. I've seen that in my childhood and seen it multiple times since then. I think it was one of my favorites of my mother's. The TV, whenever it was showing on TV, my mother would sit down to watch it or whatever. But it's interesting that Bimal Roy, I think, has done quite a few of his films are female centric or revolve around women. There's Parinita, there is Sujata, there is uh, I mean, women have played very strong, roles in his films. Very central. Bandini, in particular, I think more than just even being female centric, it's also a very woman's point of view in some sense. I mean, the entire film seems to be at one level from her point of view entirely, not just about her, but it seems to almost come from a woman's headspace, which is something that Bimal Roy's done an amazing job with. But yeah, I mean, I think Bimal Roy is I think one of the slightly underappreciated directors today. I mean, people talk of Guru Dutt, and somehow Bimal Roy Saab gets a little ignored in being celebrated as much by the younger generation in particular. But he's been a little bit sort of ignored. I personally, I feel. I mean, of course, there are Bimal Roy fans out there, but I wish he was better known, because some of his films, I mean, he was very, very influential. I mean, and in terms of the kind of cinema that was happening. I mean, obviously very, very influenced himself by the sort of neo-realist movement in Europe at that point of time, and then picking up from there with Do Biga Zameen and stuff. But his mix of art and commerce, in terms of like say even like say a film like Madhumati, for example. I mean, it's just so huge commercial hit. I think massive commercial hit in its time, and very commercial at that level. But still, he manages to retain that nice balance between art and commerce, and between melodrama and realism. Yeah. So I really admire him for that.
But what do you think about his directing styles? Like, have his directing styles influenced your directing styles as well?
For sure. I mean, in terms of the realism, I think Bimal Roy's films, I mean, compared to this, especially the cinema, the other Indian cinema that was happening around that time, uh, so definitely a much more realistic style, and it stands out. I mean, even say Bandini Mein, I mean, Nutan's performance, it's so restrained, and there isn't much hysteria, much melodrama there. I mean, there are moments of melodrama, but they're good moments of melodrama, if you know what I mean. And but yeah, so that realism, that sense of restraint, that little sense of of and dignity. Yeah, I mean, that film, everyone is so dignified in Bandini, Nutan's character, everyone's character, Dharmendra's character, Ashok Kumar's character. And the whole film is just. I mean, even Iftikhar's character, who's the creepy sort of jailer, this deputy jailer, who's the villain type. For the creepy jailer that he is, even he is quite dignified, yeah, given that how it can be.
The
So yeah,
person who actually hears her story through the letter, I think, which
so
is.
that's the main jailer, but unka ek deputy hota hai, the one who is kind of lusting after her.
Oh,
Uh,
okay. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Got to know.
played by Iftikhar, who used to normally play cops in most movies, yeah, through the 70s also and everything. But yeah, so there's a lot of dignity in his storytelling, and in the way he captures the performances and the way he treats people. Yeah, so I mean, I think it's a very humanistic approach. I don't think necessarily my own cinema has that humanistic approach, but it's something I admire a lot in other people's films. Yeah, that the fact that they can love and trust humans overall so much. I'm a little more cynical about human nature. Yeah, so. But it's always I find it very lovely to see films where people are sort of sort of a more loving look towards humanity. Yeah. मेरा अपना look is थोड़ा little cynical.
Oh yes, that's the reason. Like even you said about the melodrama thing, the emotional thing. Even like you said that like though because I mean your mom like forced you to watch the those films. Here also we are like forced to watch those 70s Amitabh Bachchan films, and we also know like personally speaking, I know that how all those like Amitabh Bachchan melodramas are. But after watching this film, I was like, okay, like there are Hindi commercial films with songs which can handle some amount, some perfect level of melodrama, and that's a very good thing. And I was, yeah, yeah, go ahead, sir.
No, no, yeah, absolutely. I'm just agreeing with you.
Yeah, that's the main reason I was very much invested in this film, and I liked it very much, even from the first song. When like I'm not a big musical fan, but when I like when the song ended, they actually like the lady warden actually acknowledged that while singing in the jail, and I was
Yeah.
like, wow, the singing was actually part of that narrative, and I was blown away by it, since not being a Indian cinema like the musical lover. So that's the reason I was blown away. Even so, what impact did you have with the songs in this film?
No, absolutely. So, I mean, the songs really contribute to the narrative. I mean, at each step. I mean, and older films tended to do that much more than say contemporary Hindi cinema does. I mean, I think the films of the 50s, 60s. There's a few examples. I can't think of others off the bat, but even through the 70s, yeah, I think there were some films which you really utilize the songs very well to convey emotion, to convey that poetry or visual poetry or emotional poetry, and they were very well woven into the narrative. Today, you don't really see too much of that, and it's a little disappointing because it's a sort of like an art form that is kind of dying out of being able to use songs to convey narrative. And Bandini is a fabulous example. I don't think there's one bad song in the entire film. Yeah. There's not one song you want to fast forward, or very often I'll fast forward a song, but yeah, ye gana itna acha nahi hai, whatever. But Bandini, every single song is just outstanding. In fact, it's one of the few albums I listen to like end to end. Sometimes listen to the whole music album. Nowadays, of course, Spotify or Apple Music or whatever. But back in the day, in the CD. So there's very few Hindi music albums. I'll actually the other one of the
Cassettes.
other. Yeah, yeah. I mean, now we pura ka pura top to bottom pura sunne ka, and without skipping a song. Yeah. In contemporary cinema, the only album I can think of which I never fast forward a single song is Devdi with Amit Trivedi. I think it's a classic album. It's very first one. Uh, Incredible again. But of course, the films are not comparable. But I think Devdi also did a pretty good job with using the songs for forwarding the narrative. I think in one of the more contemporary examples that I can think of. But I don't think Anurag's ever been able to match that level of mixing music and stuff again. But Bandhani, yeah, coming back to Bandhani, the songs, man, I think the songs are just another level of stuff. I think it's S.D. Burman's probably finest work. I think it's probably Shailendra's finest work. It's Gulzar Saab's very first song that
He
he
was
wrote
actually
from.
the AD of the film, I think.
I'd love to know more about that stuff. I've only heard these stories. But yeah, I'd love to know actually. I think we don't document enough of what was the making of Bandhani like. How did and apparently Gulzar Saab had to be convinced to do the song. Yeah, he didn't really want to be a lyric writer and stuff, so he had to be convinced. But yeah, I'd love to know more about कैसे हुआ था, क्यों हुआ था, how did the whole process work. Uh, Also, given that it was Bimal Roy's probably last film, now I think that he did, and uh, just incredible. Yeah, that the, and his career in Bombay was not that long. It was 10, 11 years, man. I was a little surprised. I think he came to Bombay in the early 50s, and this is late 60s. I mean, sorry, early 60s. This is 63 or something. So in about 10, 12 years, the amount of his Bombay career was about 10, 12 years, and but the amount of fabulous films he managed to pack in there, yeah, quite amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, but yeah, so I feel a little sort of sometimes there. I think I've spent more than 10 years in Bombay myself, and I haven't done one third the amount of work that Binod have managed to do.
No,
But
sir. Actually, you have like with Manorama
yeah,
Six Feet Under. It's like it was incredible.
thank you. You're being kind there. But yeah, it's something to aspire to. Yeah, the level of music, and how beautifully it works. I mean, I can't imagine that film without those songs. Those songs have so much emotion packed into them, and it's a very Indian emotion. I mean, there's the sort of the Bira ka Gana, the and yeah, there's so much emotion packed in there. There's a sort of spirituality almost packed in there, and I think yeah, that's another thing we can discuss at the point about like my take on the spiritual aspects of the film or the metaphors. But yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, it's just it's a beautiful album. I think it's one of the best albums probably from a Hindi film for personally for me.
Like you said, so even I also like was in shock that even like I actually listened to one of the songs of this film, like "O Jaane Wale Ho Sake To Lord Ke Aana." It just crushed my it just crushed my heart, because it's so impactful and equally beautiful. And that's the reason, I don't know why, but like in contemporary films, like people aren't able to use these kind of beautiful lyrics, like they used to do in back in the 60s, 50s, 60s. And and also last film, I think, for me, contemporary film was Tamasha, I would say, to a great extent, was having great songs, and which the songs actually put forward the narrative. So
Right.
that's the reason. So that's why.
Yeah. I think
So,
Imtiaz does a decent job with that as well, in terms of using music to forward the narrative.
exactly, sir, exactly. Final thoughts on this film.
So yeah, so I mean, just in terms of like I think what Bimal Roy does really really successful in this film is use metaphor so subtly. I mean, the whole notion of Bandini and that there's the prison, there's the notion of sacrifice. And it's never shoved in your face. It's all understated. The notion of sacrifice. She's sacrificed. Ashok Kumar's character has sacrificed for the nation. I mean, the way they weave in the whole like the sort of independence movement, the freedom fighters. Again, never in your face. And it's not even the main track of the film. It's one of the secondary tracks. Uh, but when that song comes on, when that the freedom fighter is going to get
Hanged.
is going to be hanged, and that song comes on, Matro Mata Lal Tere Bahu Tere, and the amount of patriotic feeling that just like that 4 minutes gives you, I think it's more than like what 2.5 hours of some contemporary fully patriotic films have given me. Like that just that Rongta Khada Hoing, and uh, it's just so much packed into it. Yeah, and what I was saying was about like I think for me, more than the metaphors of Bandini and of being a prisoner to fate. And of course, I mean, I think at one level he's saying that she's a prisoner of fate. I mean, and she's a prisoner to the love she has for this guy. And really, at the end and it's such a beautiful end. Yeah. I mean, my wife and I keep debating who she should have gone with, but but that's the first time she makes a free choice. You know what I mean? Everything else has been kind of dictated by fate for her. Yeah, that fact that he doesn't come back, the fact that she leaves home for her father's sake. The fact that uh, yeah, it's just beautiful at so many levels. But yeah, the thing I was saying that I think for me, what ultimately is that never really gets much remarked upon is at one level it's also a spiritual metaphor. Yeah, I mean there is the whole the Radha and Krishna and the lover missing the other and in some level it's almost like a like from the bhakti movement, like the metaphor for the lover missing the other, the lover, मेरे मेरे साजन है उस पार, quite literally के एक दरिया बीच में है हमारे, and that's actually at one level in bhakti poetry or in even Sufi poetry, that's always a metaphor for God and for mankind. Yeah, so it's just beautifully done. The whole
Oh,
the
wow.
richness imagery there.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, sir, for coming to my channel. So it's been a great pleasure and an honor myself to be having like the second director on my channel. Like the first is Vijay Jaipal, which has which podcast is coming, and like as you are the second director, so it's been a real pleasure and an honor to
Thank you for having me, Sanket. Hopefully, talk to you again soon sometime.
Yeah, sure, sir, sure. And
Okay.
thank you so much, and goodbye, sir.
Thank you. Take care.
Yeah.
Bye.